Estoy un poquito cansada. Pero... Bon.
Bueno, oui, ça marche. Sí, sí. Egun on danoi. Beste Nest saiaren baitan ospatzen diren masterclassetara, sed bienvenidas a las...
Welcome to the masterclasses that that take place within the Nest, the film schools competition from everywhere in the world. We have a very beloved filmmaker for the festival, and especially for this section. And we could watch this movie yesterday within the official section of the film festival. And I would like to start off with this conversation from the physical place where we are, when in 2015, this old tobacco factory became a cultural center, and we created this theater. And one of the first seasons that we showed here was your work. And I wanted to start asking you about your first memory in a film theater. Can I speak in French? Yes, of course. Sorry. My first memory, does it work? Yes. Is that you could smoke. And I used to love it. I loved smoking, being able to smoke in the cinema. I had been here before, yes, it's true. It's not the first time I've been here. My mic doesn't seem to work, or does it? I think it does. The question then was, sorry, I didn't hear my own reply, sorry.
Pregunta.
Yo estaba preguntando, he hecho como una referencia.
I made a reference to the place where we are because this theater was one of the first seasons that we watched was your work. And this came from your beginnings as well. And do you remember your first experience in a film theater? I think, well, for the first time, my grandfather in Paris took me to see a movie which wasn't made for somebody for my age, which was War and Peace, with Audrey Hepburn, Mel Ferrer. I have a vague memory of that movie. It's clear I was fascinated by it, actually, although, of course, it scared me. Before we start talking about your movie, I would like to go a little bit into your method, into how you approach the cinema, filmmaking, which I think are very instinctive, more maybe sensitive than rational, and that come from an inspirational place. Your work is multi-personal, but also you start off from other works that have also been previously written. And when it comes to movies, do you focus on images too? You know, your framing, or just images? Yes, but in an unconscious way, almost. Movies that we usually see, the movies that I have always liked, the movies that I remember are there. And every time we have a frame, we make a shot. Even if we think that we are adapting completely to the script, to the actress or the actor, I think that there's always the memory of the cinema is always there to me, it's something really important. And when they say that I have a way, an instinctive way of working, I think that I am somebody who has a bit of an anxious, scaredy character, and I try not to be too instinctive and try to be reasonable and rational. Because otherwise it would be a bit dangerous to let myself go, to let myself be carried away by emotions. And I think that a shooting session, for those who are here, you know this very well, when you're shooting, there's so much stress. It's like a battle. It's like a fight against time. And what is instinctive is almost a way of survival or adaptation, it's not like an artistic instinct that can just come up as if it was like a spring coming from the mountain. It's more kind of instinct of survival. Maybe that's a bit serious to say, but it is a way of saving the movie and to remain within its own pace and not let it go and to keep control of it. And that's my reply. There's been a moment when I've heard you talk about how Joachim Jarmusch showed you the beautiful moments of a shoot session, or, you know, which I think is a very nice way to describe a friendship that has been linked by the cinema. Are you still finding those spaces, beautiful spaces for you personal, when it comes to creating, that have a very lonely component, actually? I'm going to try to reply in stages. The deep loneliness is a type of loneliness that's a little bit particular. It's very specific during a movie, but it's a type of loneliness that you can share with the crew and with the work colleagues. And therefore, it's a loneliness, yes, it's loneliness, but we feel it maybe in the morning when you wake up, or while you're sort of half asleep during the night, maybe. There's a group. We're a group, and this group, this team, allows us to live in the abstract loneliness of art. I think that, at least in my case, I don't make a movie thinking, God, I'm a lonely artist. No, there's a team there, and that is what makes the relationship that we have with other work colleagues is essential. And it makes this essential. And to talk about beauty, I have to say that beauty is always there. Beauty doesn't wear off. And I can see the beauty in this movie, for example, and it's still there. But I think that the beauty of the world, and also the ugliness in the world, because the world is not always beautiful, doesn't wear off, doesn't wear out. My body does, but not the beauty in the world. And nor does ugliness, nor does violence either. And going back to Jim Jarmusch didn't show me the beauty of a shooting session. He showed me something much more important, which is beauty. It's something I had dreamt about before, a long time before, but he taught me something, to have a sense of humor. I didn't have one, but thanks to him, that way of smiling, even when things go wrong, that's what I learned from him. I think it's a really nice reply, because you kind of touched different themes that have been shown in your movie. It's also cruelty, not just beauty, the darkness of the world. And I would like to start talking about the film that we've just seen here, The Fence, because the inspiration maybe comes from a friendship, yes, but it comes from a theater play. And I have to ask you this question. How did you access this work, which was written in 1979? I went to see the play because I liked Coltes's plays. I felt that they were very interesting works. It was the first time that a man like him spoke about, not just about the world, from a French perspective. It was something that transcended countries. It was something that was bigger than that. And I felt deep emotion by the words he used. He was young, he was very good looking, he was a young, handsome man, very attractive, and present in his work. And then, quite by chance, I made my first movie with Gérard de Courcouronnes, and Isaac and Bernard were very good friends. They had a very close friendship. They even considered each other like brothers. I got to know Bernard better, and then when I made my first movie, Bernard came to see the shooting. And at that moment, he told me about Nigeria, where he had seen a theater play similar to this, which was described in his theater play in his own. It was not called The Fence. It wasn't called Le Cri de Garde either. Battle with Men and Dogs. That's what it's called in English. And maybe thinking about that, that's why we made it in English, because, well, so that we could connect with Nigeria and former British colony, and the language of Isaac. His real language is a language called Iyumba, which is also talked in Nigeria. I hope I have replied correctly. Have I replied? Yes, you are connecting with certain things, actually, that I would like to comment about the movie. You have just mentioned, we were talking about the theater play, but you mentioned that you were there in one of the performances. And if I'm not wrong, this play was debuted in 1990 in Spain, opened in Spain in 1990. And for those of us who have been able to see it live, I would like to ask you what really captured you in terms of the acting, also the words, and maybe the scenography. Can you tell me a little bit about how you perceived the play being shown? Patrice Géraud was the one who was in charge of mise en scène. They had an incredible decor, backdrop. There were lots of elements. There was a bridge. There were lots of you could see like a building site. But the important thing that was in the theater was that the character. The big difference was that the character of the black person was like a shadow. He was always behind the fence. And there was a scene which is not in the movie. In the theater play, there was a scene because he wanted Albury to exist a little bit like behind and to be like on the side. And he had to be behind the fence. And the character had to kind of like walk along a river. You played that, Nina. Leone. The character of Leone was there and was going to talk to him. I mean, it was a little bit implausible to a certain extent because it was like a sort of hole in the middle of the play. And when we wrote the script, we thought that, of course, we went in a theater and we could go from one place to another of that fence. We could travel across the fence to the other side. There's something that links space and language. It's something that you started commenting before. There's a detail that I think is very interesting of the two titles that the movie has, because in its original version in French, Les Cris de Garde, the translation would be something like the cry of the guards. And it kind of like takes you to that classic choral theater, which is like a collective sense where the narration is, and here it's the night guards. But the title in English, The Fence, is about something spatial. And in a sense, it sets a limit, kind of like the front of the stage and the back of the stage, maybe at the theater. And I think that even from the titles, this notion has expanded. It's a fence between the whites and the black, between white people and black people, especially. So, going back to what the movie is, I would like to ask you about this word. I have to interrupt you because evidently the title of the play in French wasn't the cry of the guards, Le Cri de Garde. The title was a lot more violent in the theater play. But he wrote a certain, some notes, and when he visited those places in Nigeria, he always remembered the night. And at night, he could hear the cry of the guards who said, everything's fine, everything's going all right. And that's why when I was asked if I had a title on my mind, I knew that the translation, the fence, I knew that in French, I didn't really like it in French. So then at first, yes, I did think about that, but I could see that it didn't work out. And that's why I went to those notes by Bernard, and I decided to call it The Cry of the Guards. And I think that that's the way it's being shown in France. The movie obviously has a symbolic read, which there are different breaches, racial, cultural, economical, and financial breaches, but it's also a physical space. And I wanted to ask you, when it comes to the shooting, actually, how you structured having the fence and how all that choreography was built around that fence? In the first chapter, we can see a decor, a backdrop. We talked with the person in charge, and we worked out the way this fence had to be, what it had to look like. It was too expensive. So we worked out how many meters we would need, exactly how long it had to be, and taking into account the budget of the movie. So, and we saw that it was going to be very expensive. So the decorator thought that maybe the cheapest way and the most economical and maybe even the most beautiful would be to try to get containers, for example, to make the house, those containers that are found in ports, in decks, which are usually transported on ships, and some people use them for animals and chickens and stuff. Some people use them like that in France, and the idea came because of financial reasons, and the perimeter of this area wasn't too big. So we thought, together with my assistant, a fantastic person who helped me so much, we both decided that we were going to follow a chronological order with the script, following the script, so that I could move around better one way from one side to the other of the fence, and also with the photographer, with the cameraman, who had actually got this kind of like yellowish light. You know, it's much whiter inside the house. Our photographer is very fast. And we spent a long time running from one side to the other of the fence, but always trying to remain in the pace of the actors. It's like we said, it's a very symbolic element. It has an architectural presence. It's very special to be able to make a movie in a chronological order. It's not the usual thing, but intrinsically, the treatment of the movie is very special because the theater play was written in 1979, and it actually tells us the story of something that's much more nowadays. It has to do with companies, with the looting, with with the way things work, with capitalism in the world at this moment. And how I wanted to ask you how you took something from 1979 and transformed it to today's. It's not very difficult. It wasn't difficult to do. Colonized countries that have got their independence in the African continent is very, very rich. We know that. It has a lot of raw materials, oil, precious metals. And then, of course, after colonization, it was evident that we were going to see a different kind of colonization and exploitation, and sometimes with their own agreement, and with the agreement of some African presidents and all that, against the economy of that country. And I think that the crew in this movie, half of the technicians and the engineers were from Senegal. And I think we were in a region of Senegal where two big oil ports were being built, and that, of course, was totally trending. And nowadays, we were talking about something that was very, very real and present at this moment. I wanted to ask you if, at the location of the shooting, it's not that it's real. I mean, there's obviously there's a scene set up. Obviously, there's cameras, etc. But it's a place where these building work is being done. Well, I simplified it a little bit, but he knows it well because he was there in these two places. People work during the day, and we worked at night. We arrived in the evening, and we saw the workers, or the people who working at the site there. And then the other workers came before the sun rose. And sometimes there were like noises, like there was like the rumbling of machines working in the distance. But the truth is that practically we are the only ones working there when the workers weren't there. So that was our pace. And I thought that it was really exciting to be able to work like that. We have here an audience that come from all over the world who are students. And I wanted to encourage already people to ask questions. We are going to continue with the talk, but we'll be very, very happy to have your participation in the Q&A. We have a microphone. And so here on the second row. Please don't. Mia is here too, so please don't hesitate to ask Mia questions. Good morning. Thank you very much for being here with us. Continuing with the conversation and talking about shooting and following the chronological order of the script and also the place and the location. It's very specific where building work is taking place. There was a moment that almost seemed like a documentary, for example, when they were shooting around the machines. To what extent was there like two types of methods? One more towards the fiction and other maybe lighter, more direct, to maybe be able to improvise? I don't know. No. There was no improvisation. Not at all. The script was there. And when you have a very small budget and not too ambitious, well, there's some dates, very clear dates that you can't be delayed. So the only improvisation can be dangerous. So the only improvisation is cutting scenes. I mean, you can do that, but so a scene that I shot with a mobile phone, which it's the flashback scene when he's with the bulldozer, Cal, and when he sees Nuncia, when he throws the helmet to the ground and he says he's leaving, that scene. Well, first of all, Tom had to learn to drive a bulldozer, but also we were there with him, and we had material that wasn't too sophisticated. We decided to shoot that scene with a mobile phone, and also the landscape scene from the plane. That's how it was done. But apart from that, we used a classical methodology. Obviously, we didn't have any kind of dolly system or anything. We had very simple equipment, and that's why the scenes, the pickup in the truck, are simple. But I like the result. And Ali Gautier, the photographer director, he makes some frames also fantastic with his handheld camera on his shoulder, or from a car. Always. I always think that whatever he does is fantastic, Was it the first time you shot with this continuity, with this chronological continuity, or had you done it before? No, never. It was the first time. It was the first time. Thank you. Hello. I wanted to ask Mia, what's it like to work with Claire? And to ask Claire if she has any specific kind of method of working with the actors. If you can tell us a little bit how you direct the actors. Mia needs a mic, doesn't she, to be able to reply? Mia.
Just incredible, and it's a way that I love to work. Claire didn't really like to rehearse or block things through too much. She liked it to feel very organic, which for me I think is how you get the characters to feel most alive and most human. So I love to work like that. And also Claire has a way of being very clear with what her vision is, of what she's trying to achieve. So for us, it was really kind of easy to really immerse ourselves in that world, and yeah, for it to all just feel like it was coming very naturally, like we were really there and amongst it.
It's true. In my first movie, I was very afraid to rehearse, actually. When I said later, action, I felt that the scenes were they were worse than when we were rehearsing. So I said, come on, let's shoot directly, and that put me at ease. Maybe it's not the best way or the most intelligent way, but I felt very at ease like that. But we didn't know each other at all. We met at the moment of casting, and there's something that happened. At least it was important for me, and we liked each other. I immediately felt trust towards her. I liked her, and everything was just easy. There's a moment that's quite crucial when, for example, just before the shoot, when we were trying costumes on and all that, there were moments, days, chatting and talking about a pair of shoes. But we were actually talking about the character, and maybe it's simply a way to communicate, to talk, to discuss things before the shoot begins. And that way, those chats allow us to overcome any kind of shyness and allow us to break a barrier also.
Bonjour, merci
Bonjour.
beaucoup.
Hello. Could you please tell us a little bit about the adaptation of the work, of the play, the dialogues? I don't know the original play, but I felt that there were moments in the text that were very, very beautiful around that barrier between the two characters. And I was wondering to what extent those dialogues were already there in the play, or you adapted them, and if not, how did they find that balance between like a theatrical text or more cinematic text? The dialogues, Bernard's dialogues, are we had to change them a little bit because, of course, to begin with, it was translated into English. That to begin with. Drôle Band worked with me and Suzanne to adapt that play and to be able to turn it into a natural oral language, English. But we tried to preserve typical elements of the play by Bernard-Marie Coltès. For example, when Matt Dillon says, or when Horn says to Albury, waiting for one night is not a lot of waiting. Yes, but that little thing, those small things for some people, small, whatever it means, it could mean death. So they can be really important. So that was one of the dialogues that was there in the original play by Bernard. And between Horn and Albury, there's a lot of good manners, and that was essential to the play, that kind of extreme politeness on the part of Horn. It was a way of saying, yeah. Okay, I agree with you. Yeah, but we'll see. So it was like a method of protecting himself, something that even protected him more than the fence. On the contrary, Albury's politeness is also fantastic, because at that moment, that politeness is allowing him to be very aggressive. It's as if he was saying, yeah, I can also be a civilized man if that's what you need. And we decided to keep that. That was in the play, and we maintained that. But of course, we couldn't maintain everything, obviously. We had to also, obviously, talk in English, and it had to sound natural. There's a line that was also in the notes that Cortés made, which is when Mia asks Albury, "What did you think of me the first time you saw me?" And he says, "You are like a coin that fell to the floor and doesn't shine for anybody." And that is an original line. Yeah, you shine for no one. It's an original line from the play.
Bonjour, merci pour ce film.
Good morning. Thanks very much for this movie. Isaac. I'm interested in Isaac. He's like a statue, like a stone statue, with that kind of lack of mobility, lack of movement. And I thought of Chocolat, that movie that you made at the beginning of your career. I think that throughout your career, there's been also a very important observance about virility, about masculinity. In this case, also with Matt Dillon, obviously. I mean, and Denis Lavin. Yeah, I think that you have made an observation several times with about masculinity, with you being a woman as a filmmaker. Well, I'm going to try and reply beginning with the end of your question. I don't think about masculinity or virility, men, women. They can be equal, or they can be sexy, attractive. They can be, whether they're man or woman. If they have that kind of warmth, that kind of physical warmth, then I'm interested. But to me, virility or masculinity is a very difficult term to translate. There's a movie by Godard, which is called Masculine, Feminine. That's beauty. The masculine can also exist in women, and that feminine element is also present in men occasionally. And as to Isaac's presence there, like a statue, I think that he actually represents a sort of threat. And that threat required that still presence that's there throughout the night. And that's what makes it like a statue. But it's because he's decided not to leave until he's got the body back. And I think that Isaac has a way of acting and of existing with that physique that he has, with his inner self. I don't know if it's masculine, I don't know, but it's powerful in a quiet way. We don't want him to be our enemy. There's something inside him and the way he is, the way he stands, which evidently is something masculine, but it could also exist in women, this kind of inner strength.
J'avais pas vu que je vous tournais le dos.
Well, thank you very much for being here. I wanted to ask you about the editing process, how long you were there editing. Was it easy? Was there a lot of changes?
Traducción. No hay. Okay.
Yo no sé hablar francés, lo siento.
Se puede.
She does have a translation. Maybe she changed the channel. No. I wanted to ask you about the editing process. How long you were there editing? Was it easy? Were there a lot of changes in the original script? Right, I'm going to reply in French. I hope it's been translated. The editor is here, and the one that did all the mixes is here too, so in this room with all of us. And he knows perfectly well that it's not easy. It's not easy to edit with me, no, because I'm always kind of restless and worried, and at the beginning, I'm totally scared. But once the movie's over, it's as if a lot of adrenaline liberated or was released, and I have the feeling that we haven't worked well. And I get these kind of ideas. I didn't do things the way I wanted them. I didn't do them right. But when the moment comes to edit, then Gil is who is going to help me, is going to teach me again to recognize the scenes that we've shot and that I am sometimes unable to see at the beginning. He's the one that deals with the scenes, and he's the one that gives me back that connection with the movie. And then I would say that the changes, well, of course, there's always doubts as to some scenes or some shots, but I don't make too many different shots. And I think that the work was almost like a compulsory trajectory. We couldn't change that much. No, it takes place throughout one single night. So we couldn't really introduce a lot of changes. And from the script itself, the scene at the airport, arrived in the middle of the night as a sort of flashback, and like an imaginary flashback. How long was the editing? How long did it take? I think he said 16 weeks. 16 weeks. Well, the editing of the images, thank you very much.
Ah, pardon, d'accord. OK. Merci beaucoup. Merci, Guy. C'était... Oui, ça va, j'entends bien.
Merci beaucoup.
Thank Thank you very much for this movie, which is fantastic. I don't know if you will agree with me, but there's some white people in Africa, but in an isolated place that requires constant protection. And these people also have that notion of, or that feeling of isolation, but at the same time they feel curiosity of visiting Africa and learning about Africa. And there's a woman who wants to get out, but she can never do it. Can you tell me a little, from the artist's perspective and from a creator's perspective like you are, what is your impression? Is it easy to go back to a subject? Well, I think you've been talking about this subject for 20 years. The play was written. No, I'm talking about you. Because from Chocolat to now, you have revisited these issues, those topics. Chocolat was shot in 1986. That was a long time ago, and I was very young. But I have to say that, for me, protection for white men or white people, it's absolutely true what you say. But we're also talking about the protection of the wealth. A certain level of power needs to be protected. When we build the fence, when we have this barrier, this fence, and the place where the guards spend the night, the sentinels, the watchmen, there was a factory there next to us, and they wanted to buy the place, that platform that we built for the movie, because they loved it. The idea according to which those materials, those raw materials like cement or like oil or even the machinery like the bulldozers, those are signs of wealth, symbols of wealth. They're the part of the wealth that needs to be protected against people whose only wish is to take them over. Whereas, for example, when we see those people, the farmers with the animals, they just want to go across that area so that their cows can reach a drinking place. They're not interested in taking the stuff. Your question is actually very deep, of course. So where is the fear? What are we afraid of when we are in Africa? We're afraid of the difference. Besides, we're also talking about money, wealth. That needs to be protected. That is what we need to protect, not just your skin color. I don't know if I replied properly, but that's my answer. But you also talked about women, didn't you? Yes, women who want to get out. And maybe it's true when we see groups of tourists visiting. There's lots of tourism in Senegal. And I have the impression that sometimes women want to sort of braid their hair or to buy typical clothes. You know, women are a bit adventurous. Those tourists, those women tourists, and also the world of industry is the same, I suppose, in this in that world. Maybe I don't know. Women feel more like they want to, they're more sort of like attracted. They want to discover. I don't know about men. During the shoot, when we shot at the airport, we took the plane with Mia and Tom. And it was in Dakar. At the very airport, there was a group of English people, English people, who were going to work on an oil rig, just men. There were engineers, well, experts in the oil. But you would have said there were children on holiday, they were happy, they were going to go to the oil rig, fly in a helicopter. So it was almost like a caricature. Do you remember? Yeah, that's how we felt.
Il y a une petite main là qui s'est levée.
I can see a hand there.
Bonjour.
I have a question. Wow, you can all speak French here. Wow. I have a question about how you direct the actors, the actress in this movie, maybe also in other movies too. You talked about this man in the darkness, in the shade, who is there standing like a statue. And I think that in some of your characters, we can see a distance, like an emotional aspect. How do you direct actors so that the performance is not totally 100% realistic, but at the same time it can be devoid of coldness at the same time? How do you deal with directing actors during and before the shoot? Well, before the shoot, apart from the anxiety and nervousness, what is there is the hope that to be able to communicate in the best way possible with actors and actresses. But when the shoot begins, there's something immediate. I can't be thinking about questions. Is this a symbolic figure, or is it alive? Is it realistic? I think there's like an alchemy during the shoot between all the actors. And then the person that does the framing and myself. And there's like a hope, a wish to be able to see something that's beyond the script. Because there are dialogues in the script, especially, descriptions of places, of light, but not the inner life. I don't like it when there's a script with brackets where it says the feeling, and in the meantime, he's watching this or he's feeling like this. I try for those details not to be in the script, but then later in the shooting, necessarily the actors and actresses are there physically, and obviously, I don't know, I'm replying in a bit of an awkward way, but I don't think about it too much. This is the way I do it. So you don't give psychological pinpoints to the characters. No, never. No, that it makes me hate it. Because, for example, Matt Dillon is an actor has a certain nervousness to himself, and he likes to think about the psychological aspect of the character, especially keep to yourself all those questions and don't ask me, because I'm not the one that can give you a useful answer. I think that it's better for you to keep those questions, because psychology makes things smaller. It's as if we wanted to get into somebody's soul, and you can't. I prefer to be surprised. I prefer to be enticed by a person. I would like you to talk briefly about the night and the fact that it's it's dark and it's night is a very important, element that also talks about the barriers and, white light and dark night. There's also a symbolism there. And this reminds me also a little bit of the movie Night Moves by Reichardt. There's something about the aesthetics of nighttime that made me think about, oh, that's a really good movie. Yeah. I would like you to talk a little bit about this. The truth is, I never thought of this darkness, this nocturnality, like you say, because it was already there in the play. This man was there, claiming wanting the body of his brother, to give it to his mother. He didn't want to wait for the next day. And obviously, the body isn't there. So that's why he gets, he's made to wait. But yes, the story is all one night. We were in a very somber, very dark place, like a sort of desert next to those other building sites. There was no light, there was no light at all. And Alit Gauthier, together with the electricity chief, the photographer, had to think of that light like a yellowish tint and whiter for the outside. And they had to take into account the moment when there's a blackout, when the light disappears, because then there weren't any more white lights and no lamps. And any photographer needs something, some light. So we kind of like forgot that mythological aspect of night, and we sort of like succumbed to the technical necessity. If anybody wants to make a last question, we are at the last moment now. I think everybody's a bit fed up. Well, let's give a big applause to Claire and for the whole crew. Thank you very, very much. Thank you very, very much. And thanks, Mia. And you.
Merci beaucoup.